Chair calls Ian Mattingly, followed by Crystal Moya. Hello, if you could please state your name, who you represent, your position on the bill, and we'll begin the 1-minute timer.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Ian Mattingly, and I'm here on behalf of the Texas Apartment Association, as well as on behalf of myself as a owner of rental property in the city of Dallas.
Your position on the bill?
I am in opposition to 886.
Thank you.
So you've heard this characterized as an anti-discrimination piece of legislation. Well, I can tell you in the city of Dallas, there's already a law, an ordinance on the books that would require property owners upon the passage of this bill to rent to people who receive housing choice vouchers or Section 8 assistance. So I have properties that are directly in the line of fire. When my properties, my company was founded 34 years ago, it was an important part of our mission to work with the housing choice voucher program, and my entire career has been spent with those families. So I can tell you in intricate detail how those families in many cases have been helped out of poverty by the program. However, the program for landlords comes with enormous burdens, both financial as well as additional risks related to the housing assistance program contract, which you heard referred to before. There are almost a dozen different ways in which the public housing authorities, which administer these contracts, can terminate the lease agreement with no remedies for the landowner. I have over $100,000 in rent outstanding for the 400 families that are currently receiving housing choice assistance. And it's not because they've lost jobs, it's not because they've lost income, it's because public housing authorities, which are frequently underfunded and undermanned, have failed to make payment on those folks in a timely fashion. And that is a financial burden that many landlords cannot sustain. I thank you and ready to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions, members? Representative Gates.
Okay, I'm looking at the flow chart, and this is what I've seen and experienced of how complicated and how it gets to be expensive because you had to have extra people to deal with the complexity a lot of times. And you're dealing with a government agency that comes out and inspect, and it can be, I heard one of the witnesses testify that she failed twice. And so, a landlord is sitting there having to take the economic loss of that unit sitting empty for an extended period of time.
That's definitely our experience.
And wouldn't lenders that, because my experience has been a lot of lenders will ask, do you take Section 8? Because, and I'm not talking about just lenders from Texas, I'm talking about from the commercial-backed mortgage security industry, that they will not even loan on a property that takes vouchers or Section 8 type tenants. Have you experienced that?
Yes, we currently accept vouchers at 2/3 of our communities where we have federally backed mortgages, but at the communities where we do not, and we have private lending institutions in place, we're not permitted under the terms of our loan agreement to accept vouchers.
Right, and so this would supersede all of that, loan documents and so forth.
It would certainly create an interesting challenge.
I guess I'll ask the next witness, well, why do they think owners don't want to take the voucher program? You can't just tie it all that it's about discrimination. I mean, there are good owners out there that, and these lower income properties are already minority field properties. So I don't know if you're taking, I guess you're assuming that a voucher is a minority usually, but it's moving into a lower income property. It's already minority, so it can't necessarily be discrimination. It's really just I guess I'll ask the next one. Well, why do you think owners don't want to take this?
Well, I'll just tell you, there are many owners like myself who have worked with the Inclusive Communities Project as well as other organizations like the Dallas Housing Authority to try to refine the process to make it easier for landlords to accept these vouchers as a form of payment. But the vouchers are not cash, and they come with strings attached. So I'll let Crystal address any other questions you may have.
Yeah, in the last week that we had some testimony on housing, there are, I think it's PCF, where, I'd done some research, and they get tax subsidies and so forth, but they take no vouchers, but they're getting tax exemptions. I think we ought to at least, compel them to have to take vouchers before you start moving the people who have an operation that's not based on any kind of voucher program.
We don't participate in those programs, but I know that Crystal does, and she can probably address those questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Representative Gates. Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are vouchers distributed by race?
Not to my knowledge. It's based upon income.
So you're not being discriminatory by race when you're accepting a voucher.
That's correct. Our screening process actually takes ethnic origin out of the equation, so we don't even know what race the person is when we're going through the application process. However, the application process to qualify someone in our process at Luma Residential takes about twice as long to go through the process.
I'm just absolutely confused by someone saying that it has something to do with race when that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about vouchers. Vouchers deal with discrimination from the standpoint of an individual having this piece of paper that simply pays your rent. You said that it would be troubling from your national lenders if you accepted Section 8. It would be troubling? Is that what you're saying?
Correct, because we would be faced between either violating the terms of our loan agreement and being in default, or violating a city ordinance.
So you're saying your loan agreement from national lenders specifically states that you can discriminate?
Specifically states that we're not permitted to accept housing choice vouchers under the terms of the loan.
Vouchers at all?
Correct.
Just this piece of paper with dollars? How many of your properties do you have national lenders?
I believe we have 6 at the moment.
Of what?
We have 29 apartment communities.
So 6 of your properties cannot, under no circumstance, accept vouchers?
Without violating the terms of the loan agreement, that's correct.
So from the standpoint of national housing discrimination laws that are on the books, that doesn't apply to your banks?
Well, it's not discrimination against an individual under the Fair Housing Act. It's a discrimination against a federal program that was designed in 1974 as a voluntary program and not as a mandatory program as it's been billed today.
So again, that standard that was put in place in 1974, which you're saying is a voluntary program, which is not a voluntary program. It's a mandated program.
In the city of Dallas,
you cannot discriminate against any individual with respect to housing.
In the city of Dallas, upon passage of this bill, it would then become a requirement that rental housing owners accept vouchers as a source of income, as a payment form, regardless of tenant.
Just as long as you don't pick person B over person A simply because A has a voucher. That's simply what it says. It just simply says you can't pick and choose your clientele because this one is pink with a voucher.
Well, it would essentially make this voluntary program a mandatory one in the city of Dallas and require landlords to execute, in addition to a standard lease agreement, this housing assistance program contract between a public housing authority and the landlord that supersedes the normal lease and contract relationship between the landlord and the tenant.
And again, if I have the right and the choice, as a businessman yourself, if 2 business people come at the same time, you and somebody else, they don't like the color of your suit, but so they go with the other guy. But you know your project is far more solid. Would you feel some kind of way about that? Would you think that you are being discriminated against because your suit is a different color and your beard is gray, as opposed to this individual who is not? Would there be some kind of heartburn about that? Or wait a minute, why is that fair? That's not fair. We have the same application. Why did you choose him over me? I have a better, my application is better.
Well, to my earlier point, it's not the same process. And, you have the document in front of you that shows the flow chart of the steps that are required to house somebody who's on a housing choice voucher versus someone who is not. So it's not exactly a parallel situation.
So again, the vouchers, this bill simply says you can't discriminate. That's all the bill says. You can't discriminate. And so I'm just saying, you're okay. You're saying, no, I want to discriminate because I don't want to do this extra paperwork.
I would like the members of the Apartment Association and rental housing owners to have the option of participating in this voluntary program, not be required to.
Do you want the option of being discriminatory?
against a federal program.
Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Johnson. Representative Morales-Shaw.
Thank you, Chairman. Ian, thank you for coming out today to give us your side of the story. I sympathize with what you're saying. I'm a business owner too, a longtime business owner, so I get what you're saying. This bill is about housing security. It's about getting people into a home and getting them off the street potentially. And housing security, maybe you and I don't have to worry about it, but it's a big deal. It's everything stems from a home. And a lot of these people don't have the resources to go up against a system that isn't working the best or optimally or how we would all want it efficiently without all the bureaucracy, right? So, what I hear you saying is that it's really a functionality problem of the housing authority that's the problem today and surrounding this issue. And they do kind of overlap and one pours into the other. But it seems to me that that's really what the problem is. It's not that you all want to discriminate or you don't want people there, but all of this burdensome stuff that comes along with it. So isn't that the better forum to be talking about fixing the functionality of the process and not about housing security?
Well, I would agree with your characterization. There are definitely challenges with this federal program, and they need to be resolved on a federal level, and that's been an enormous part of our advocacy for many years, not least of which is simply expanding the program. You heard testimony that only 1 in 4 families who qualify under income standards to receive housing choice vouchers actually receive them. The waiting lists in some cities are 15,000 long.
Mm-hmm.
And so, by making it available to more people, you're certainly going to house more people. But let me be very clear. I'm aware of no municipality in which there are unhoused vouchers. There are certainly people who struggle to find housing for their vouchers because these folks are essentially left on their own devices to find housing. Mm-hmm. There's programs like the Moving to Opportunity program that have been piloted in King County and Seattle that have been extremely effective in helping people find housing where those vouchers will be accepted in high opportunity neighborhoods. And my colleague Crystal can talk about low-income housing tax credit communities, which are often constructed in these high opportunity neighborhoods using tax credits and other federal and state benefits. And they are required under law to accept those housing choice vouchers and do so because it's part of their business model. So there's a lot of ways to tackle this problem, and this certainly I agree with you entirely that there is a problem with housing and housing affordability in the state of Texas. This does nothing to create any new units of affordable housing, and it does nothing to help resolve the issues with the program at the federal level.
To me, it creates affordable housing if there's more access to more units that people with Section 8 vouchers have access to.
There are no unhoused vouchers. So there's not a pool of vouchers out there mm-hmm. that are just waiting for a home to be open to them. Every public housing authority has full utilization of their vouchers that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. I understand that that may increase. One of the witnesses that went before you explained that program is expected to expand.
And we hope that it does, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Members, any other questions? Representative Gates.
Yeah, a couple follow-up. What is an RF? You say landowner and renter sign RFTA. What's an RFTA?
That is the request for tenant application. It's a process by which you do a pre-screening to make sure that the housing unit as well as the landlord qualify for participation in the Housing Choice Voucher Program.
So is that a government form? Or
it is.
Okay, so that's a government form. And then what is it down here? It says sign lease and HAP contract. What's an HAP contract?
That is the Housing Assistance Payment Contract. That is a separate agreement, a third-party contract that is entered in between the Public Housing Authority and the landlord that governs the relationship between the landlord, the housing authority, and the renter.
And so what if you don't agree to that? Under this legislation, would you be forced to have to accept that?
That is my understanding.
And what about your own lease? Do you have? Can you use your own lease and just say, well, if I'm going to have to take the voucher, I'll take the voucher, but we're going to use my lease. Can you do that?
So the two work in tandem. You do typically sign your own lease, but then you're required to execute the HAP contract in addition to your own lease, which has language that supersedes the lease.
So basically, it's a government lease. Then you're having to sign on to.
In many ways, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions, members, for this witness? Thank you for taking all our
Thank you,
questions.
Mr. Chairman.